So I saw something interesting recently. Former Age of Empires developer raised the question, are we stuck in a rut? And this is specific to the RTS space. And I think it's an interesting question. So let's look at what people are actually playing right now. So I jump into Steam charts, and it takes a lot of scrolling to get even close to an RTS game. Oh, here we go. Here's Total War Warhammer, which, to be fair, has a huge built-in audience. It's a great game. It's a great franchise. And then what's the next title up? It's Age of Empires. Phenomenal game, obviously. But isn't it kind of wild that, talking over 2 decades later, this title is still king of the charge, both in the Age of Empires franchise and, generally speaking, a really stable and, in fact, growing player base over time. And how are the newer titles in the Age of Empires franchise doing? Well, I mean, there's a pretty clear delineation between AoE 2 and AoE 4. To be fair, looking at AoE 4, it's been steadily growing since post-launch letdown. And I know that recently I've heard a lot of the DLC has really improved a lot of the core game experience. So if people aren't playing the games, what games are they actually buying? So if we jump into the Steam sales charts, let's actually go ahead and see what's been selling recently. I'm going to search for RTS titles within the strategy space, and what pops up? A lot of familiar names. So in general, players aren't really buying new titles, and they're not really playing newer titles. And is that a result of the new titles and what they're bringing to the table, or what players kind of intrinsically want within the RTS space? It's very interesting that if you search for RTS on Reddit, one of the most popular threads in the last couple of years talks specifically to how players want more of a 2D art style or a pixelated art style, which I think is totally fair because that art looks absolutely fantastic. But it raises a great point that if we want visuals that emulate a lot of what we loved about those 2000s series games and the old isometric engines, are we comfortable with the 3D style of a lot of these newer titles? Is that the big problem, or is it the game mechanics where we want innovation there with older art style? It feels sometimes as RTS players we're quite particular about these are the game mechanics that we really, really love, and God forbid you step outside of that, which is kind of what the AoE developer refers to. But at the same time, how do you find that balance between this little bit of old, this little bit of new, and bringing something new to the table visually and storytelling wise? I think it's pretty telling that if you look at some of the projects on Steam that are seeing a lot of enthusiasm right now, it's projects like the Scouring and DORF and Dustfront that are doing a great job, I think, emulating some of those visuals from the past, but innovating with how they present them, and then staying true to certain core game mechanics, while in the case of, I think, Dustfront, having a fair number of innovations. And one thing that's really cool is if you look at DORF, their developers have done a really great job posting some of the technical techniques that they've used to innovate in the art space while still kind of having artwork that looks very familiar and has a great hit of nostalgia. Back to the core question, why is the RTS genre broken? You're still playing the same game. And I think that it's true, right? To some extent, you are still playing the same game. If we just look at the Steam charts, people are playing well-known franchises. But a good counterpoint is that those franchise games are, in many cases, remastered versions of the games that came out 25 years ago. And so, in many of those cases, they've got better visuals, improved networking, the actual performance has been vastly improved. And then more than a few of those actual gameplay mechanics have been adjusted because the developers have had time over the course of 20 years to see real pain points from players and patch them with the benefit of hindsight. And so I think what will be particularly interesting is if we look at the next 5-10 years, is which of these new titles like the Scouring, DORF, Dustfront have gotten better because of the benefit of players actually playing them, giving that really concentrated feedback, and then hopefully the developer is acting on that. And in particular with the Scouring, coming back with things like map editor, scenario editor, those are great because that used to be kind of de facto standard. If you go back to the old AoE 2 games, awesome scenario editor, why has that gone away? Players want it. And so it's great to see someone else coming out with one. Well, thanks for taking the time to listen to this. Love to hear your feedback, comments. Do you feel differently? Do you feel like the RTS space is, I don't know, I guess fully functioning? And maybe take an opportunity to jump on Steam and wish us a couple of those titles like Scouring or DORF, because they're doing some really cool things. And you can find our project Coloniser on Steam to wishlist if you like it. We'd love you to check out the free playtest. And if you get an opportunity to jump on our Discord channel, that's where we do most of our communication. Take care and be well.